Welcome to the channel. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Join me everyone today for a unboxing and a full review on one of the brand new Pagani designs out this year. This of course is the Pagani Design PD1671, aka the BLACKBAY Homage. This watch came out just around the time of the March sale. Now, interestingly enough, this watch took 2 weeks longer than it should have getting to me. That's because the seller, when I placed my order initially, got back to me about a week and a half later saying, "Oh, I just noticed I haven't shipped your order. Do you still want it?" I go, "Well, of course, mate." So the watch came to me quite late, but never mind. It's here now, and that's why I'm going to do an unboxing and, of course, get a full review out today in this video as well. So let's get the watch out of the box. So I'm not even going to talk about the box in this video. We know what the box is. We know what we get. We've seen plenty of Pagani designs on YouTube. So here is the BLACKBAY Homage. Now, at the moment, Pagani Design are absolutely killing it. They've released a good handful of brand new models for 2021, and they've released them relatively close together. So what I'll do in the description, I'll link all the new releases by Pagani Design in the video. So if you're interested, check them out. Pagani Design, of course, a very, very popular watch, and they have been for the past couple of years. As you can see, I went with the black version, and you know, if you're a subscriber of the channel, you know I am a bit partial to this whole black and gold sort of color options. So of course this is the one I went with. I'll show the other color options that this watch also comes in. It's got a total of 4 different color options. I must admit, it looks good in all 4 color options. So let's start unwrapping this watch. So there we go, all unwrapped. That actually wasn't too bad, taking all that stuff off. So first impressions, initial impressions out of the box. What do I think? You know what, in hand so far, it feels pretty nice. It feels good. There is a fair bit of weight just on the actual case. The bracelet seems to be okay as well. I don't really feel any sharpness. I don't see anything which immediately does stand out. So all's good so far. Pagani Design PD1671. Let's start off the review by looking at the specifications. So you've got a full 316L stainless steel case construction, bezel, case back, bracelet. You also have a matte aluminium bezel insert with a unidirectional bezel. You've got a domed sapphire crystal. The watch comes with 100 meters of water resistance, and the movement which is powering the watch is the Seiko Epson NH35 movement with hack and wind functionality, a date complication, and a beat rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour. Now that movement is very reliable. By now, I expect we are very familiar with this movement. Switching over to dimensions, you do have a 42mm diameter case. You've got a 14.5mm thick case, and the lug to lug is 50mm. You have an overall weight on this bracelet at around 183 grams. Now, as mentioned, most of the weight is indeed in the watch case. There's not a whole lot of weight in the actual bracelet. Now, prices. So this watch will cost you £113. Now, give or take £5–10 depending on whether or not this is in the sales. So that's roughly around $150 for this brand new Pagani Design. Now, we know Pagani Design, they have, especially this year on the newer models, I think it started back when Pagani did the Seamaster No Time to Die Homage, that the prices increased. So they were sitting around 60 or 70 pounds before. Now they are sitting quite a bit above 100, so around 110, 115. And so currently I'm just gauging, you know, whether or not the increase is justified. I do have a few Pagani models, so if you haven't done so, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell so you can stay up to date with all the latest reviews. And I'll be doing a few more unboxings on the Pagani designs to come. So currently I'm just trying to gauge, you know, whether or not this increase in price is reflected in the actual overall build quality of the watch. But in order to do that, we've got to really break down this watch and give a in-depth review. So let's start off in usual fashion at the dial, and as you can see, you've got this textured crosshatch style dial. For what it's worth, the detailing and the texturing on the dial is quite deep. You can see that really well. I do actually like that texturing. Now you've got a mix of printed and applied features. Let's look at the applied first. So you've got applied hour markers. You've got a triangle at the 12, batons at the 6 and 9, and the rest are just square indices. Now you've got a bronze frame around them, and you've got printing at the 12, Pagani Design as usual, and above the 6 you've got automatic, water resistance, and the water rating. Just below the 6 o'clock baton you've got Japan movement, which, you know, it is accurate, so it's good that they've put that there. And then you've got a date frame at the 3 o'clock. Now around the dial you've got a bronze or gilt printed chapter ring. Now looking at Pagani's dials, even though they are a budget watch, the dial quality is actually very good. The printing is clear. Looking at the applied features, looking at the printed features as well, very clear. There's no misprints, there's no distortions, and there's no visible defects looking at the dial. Now the hands used, of course, these are very recognizable. You'll see similar style of hands on the actual Tudor BLACKBAY, which this watch is trying to homage. So you've got this snowflake style hour hand, a sword style minute hand, and again that snowflake diamond on the second hand. Now the finishing on the hands, it's almost a bronze color, and it is polished on the second hand, and it's a very thin sort of outline around the hands, but I believe that is also polished. Now the loom on this watch, you can see it looks beige if anything. So this is the old radium style of loom that is kind of very popular currently. It's on a lot of these vintage skin diver style watches, and with that vintage loom. Now there is a very slight but very visible difference between the loom on the hands and the loom on the dial. Now the loom on the dial markers is quite light compared to the loom on the hands, which seems to be just a bit richer in color. So there is a bit of a discrepancy between the dial and hands. Let's check out that loom, guys. Now for once, Pagani is doing well in the loom department. Now for some reason they couldn't get, you know, the usual BGW9 they have, or the, you know, the lighter color hour markers. They couldn't get that right. But when it comes to this vintage style of loom, especially going back to the 5 leader comparison that I did with the Heimdalla and the Pagani, the No Time to Die homage comparison, we noticed that Pagani outperformed them, and I think it's going to be the same case here. So when it comes to this coloration of loom or this style of loom, I think it's perhaps C1. Pagani are really doing well in this department. As you can see, it's very visible. And I haven't charged up with the UV light as well. This is just the LED lighting within the room. So I think they have done a pretty good job on the loom. Now, this type of loom across the board doesn't last very long. It isn't very bright initially, but going back to how Pagani have done it, I think that's more than sufficient, especially considering the style of loom that is being used. Let's turn our attention to the actual crystal, the fit and finish. So it's almost a box style crystal. The reason I say it isn't because I think it isn't protruding enough or pronounced enough. However, you do have a really nice curving on the edge. But it is a dome crystal. With regards to air coating, I'm not too sure if there is clear air coating, or it might just have zero air coating, but the good thing is it doesn't have that annoying blue air coating, which kind of tends to get in the way if you haven't done it right. Now, crystals, fine. Let's have a look at the actual bezel. So let's start with the bezel insert. So this is a matte effect aluminium bezel insert where you've got these, again, vintage beige style markers to match the loom on the dial. Now, do they match? They don't. So the actual tone in this on the markers here is slightly more brown or slightly chocolatey compared to this very light and cream color style of loom on the dial. So there is a clear mismatch between that. Now they've got a pip at the 12 o'clock. As you saw, it is illuminated. What I would have preferred is where the red triangle is, if they've removed the pip and kept that as it is, and maybe had a bit of red text, perhaps the water rating in red, or maybe even a red tip on the second hand, similar to how Philida have done the Seamaster homage. That would have made it match just a little bit better, and of course, you know, getting the coloration right on the bezel insert. So let's have a look at the bezel. So this is it's quite thin coin edge style of bezel. Now we're all very interested when it comes to Pagani and the bezels. Now this is you know, above £100, and let's see if they have improved the bezel. There is a very small amount, you can feel some movement, although very, very minimal, but you can side to side, up and down. So let's give this a rotation. So a bit of a tricky bezel. So what it does have, it doesn't have back play, but it does have a fair bit of movement. Now, alignment wise, yes, pretty decent. You can get it to align, but I've got to hear this again. Now this is a 60 click unidirectional bezel. So what do I think overall? I think no doubt it can be better. No doubt we have seen better, but I think there's one thing we've got to take into consideration here is the actual thickness of the bezel. It's not very thick, and I've got a feeling if they went for 120 click or something like that, it actually would have sounded quite worse. So yeah, I don't know. I don't want to try and make excuses for them, but there is just a bit of movement. It's not as bad as the other models. I have seen worse, but this is what is going on this model. So on the case, you'll see some pretty nice level of finishing. So you've got linear brushing on the lugs, and then that transitions into this really nice polished highlight around the whole edge of the case, going down to the lugs. Now in pictures, I have seen this to be fully polished, so there's a bit of a discrepancy between the picture they've been showing us and the actual reality. As you can clearly see, this is not polished, it's actually brushed. Now the brushing is quite coarse. Now I don't know if they have done that for some kind of particular effect, but you can definitely feel that and actually see the coarseness of that. But you know, I do prefer this finishing over the polishing. With the polishing, you know, you spend more time cleaning it and worrying about micro scratches than anything else. Now fit and finish, the bracelet seems to fit really well within the lugs. Nothing protruding, it all looks level. So that's good to see. And you also got female end links, which is another bonus, just better articulation on the bracelet. Let's have a look at the crown. Now you'll notice there's a red line around the crown. Now there are some images with showing you no color around the crown. There's some images on the site showing this red line. Now I have seen on other YouTube reviews that the other colors, they all actually come with a red around the crown. So I think they're still working on this watch. There might be another version where they might eliminate that red, or they might decide to keep it. Now, that for me, that red is supposed to serve a purpose. It's supposed to be an error-proofing tool, effectively. So if you have the crown unscrewed, that is when the red should show. So it's a visual indicator to let you know to screw down the crown. Now, we've seen that done really well on the Merca. However, I don't know what this is doing here, because even when you screw it down, it is quite visible. And this is, I think, my major gripe with this watch, aside from the fact that the bezel is just still isn't right, is the fact that I think the crown is too big. I think it sticks out far too much. If anything, where you've got the red line, it should have gone in up until that, and then I think it would have looked a lot better. You do have a signed crown as per Pagani's usual characteristics, but in terms of, you know, the overall finishing, like I said, I mentioned, I do really like those highlights there on the case, and I think they have done a very good job. Let's turn our attention to the case back. You've got specifications, and of course you've got an exhibition case back, Pagani Design, water resistance, etc, etc. Now onto the bracelet. So the bracelet is fully brushed. It's also tapered. So you've got a lug to lug of 20mm, and I believe, let's see how far this comes down actually. The bracelet tapers down to 18mm. So it's a very decent taper. You've got an oyster style bracelet, and as you can see, you've got these rivets on the sides of the links just to give you that old school vintage appeal. Now the good thing about this is, if you want to compare it to, let's just say, how St. Martin have done this, is that these are non-functional in the sense that you know they're not screws acting as rivets, so that is, they don't protrude out the links too much, so nice and subtle. But when it does come to the removable links, you've got screw links, and then you've got a rivet next to them. So that is some, you know, thought into that from Pagani, and I do like this style of rivets because again, it doesn't stick out too much, but it still gives you that vintage aesthetic. Now the new Pagani clasp. I'm a big fan of this clasp. It's very easy to operate. It does look quite nice. You've got a fully brushed clasp, Pagani design, going down through to the middle. Spring pushers, and you've got this milled clasp. And what you also have is a wetsuit extension. Now it is a bit, you know, it's only stamped, it's a bit thin, but it feels solid, and as long as it works, there's nothing more we can really ask for. Full brushing present, and that is done really well. Let's put this on the wrist and let's see how it looks. So wrist check. I'm wearing my Seiko Presage Cocktail Time. So there we go. I don't just wear dive watches. It's quite a large bracelet, so I think it should fit really large wrists as well. So there it is, the Pagani Design PD1671 on my 6.5-inch wrist, and it is a good fit. 42mm diameter and a lug to lug of 50mm. Bracelet is comfortable. Now this is actually one of Pagani's most comfortable bracelets. The previous bracelets, you know, that Rolex style of bracelet they did indeed have sharp edges. The clasp was quite sharp as well, and this is why I do like the new and improved clasp. I hope they kind of stick with that clasp as well. Now what you'll see, the crown doesn't look oversized at this angle. I think the side edge of the bezel sort of hides much of that red line around the collar of the crown. And I think it does look good, it does fit well, and it definitely has a very vintage appeal and overall good presence on the wrist. So let's take it off. I think I'm ready to summarize. So what do I think of Pagani's new offering, the slightly more expensive watches? I think we just need to wait a bit. You know, they have done, I'd say, 3 or 4 new models since Feb, March. And I will be getting my hands on them as well. Some of them I already have. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, how they sit, if I can see anything, you know, substantially or significantly different from the previous models. But for this watch in particular, I do like how they have improved the loom. The bezel, so, you know what, it does work. It isn't as bad as the usual stuff. I'm trying to make excuses for them because I do understand it is quite a thin bezel. So, you know, yeah, as I say, it is what it is. I think the crown's just a bit too big for my liking. And if they are going to do another version where they sort out this red sort of color issue, then they need to do it quickly. But what I would like to see is, what is Pagani known for? To me, Pagani is known for amazing consistency. This is why I actually do rate Pagani Design really well. Consistency in terms of when you open the box, you know exactly what you're going to get. The boxes are all exactly the same. You know, the signage, the branding is exactly the same. They've always given us sign clasps, sign crowns. Now, for me, that doesn't do anything for me at all. However, it's good that, you know, they are consistent. The case backs, you know, again, everything is where, you know, you can preempt already where it's going to be. And that is what they have over a lot of the brands from AliExpress and from, you know, China. But I would like to see that now being applied to the actual functionality of the watch. So if they've made the loom pretty decent on this dial, I want to see that, you know, I want to see that next level standard being set by Pagani. And of course, the bezels, they really do need to pull their finger out and make the bezel a lot better. If they add another £10 to the value, you know, if this watch cost 120, for example, and everything was okay, you know, the bezel was fine, etc., then there's no reason to complain, right? You know, when they were around the 50-60 pound mark, there really was no reason to complain. It was really hard to criticize Pagani Design because they are very, very cheap watches. But now they're in this sort of price bracket going over the £100, it does open the gates to just a little bit more constructive criticism and just us expecting just a bit more now from Pagani Design. So that's my final thoughts on the watch. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As I mentioned, I will leave a link within the description. I'll show all the latest releases on Pagani Designs that I can find on AliExpress. And if you want to go ahead and purchase those, the links are there for you to do so. So thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.